Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Tammy DeWolfe with Gibson Sotheby's, and I am speaking with Stephen Gaspar from Inspections Plus. How you doing, Stephen?
I'm doing good. How are you, Tammy?
I'm good. So, wanted to touch base with you on a couple of things. And over the last couple of years, the market's been absolutely nuts, and home inspections have kind of been waived for a good portion of home buyers these days, or in the past, I should say. But in the last 3 to 4 months, the market seems to be stabilizing and is becoming more and more stable as we get into the winter months. So, what has happened to your business in the last 3 to 4 months?
Um, I would say as the market has started to stabilize, we've seen on our end of things in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, kind of a return to some of our old typical numbers we see on a seasonal basis. I've seen it back as far as May of this year, which is pretty nice to see. It seems to be a constant trend. I'm expecting with how our numbers look, this should continue through the holidays into next year. We're getting back to what normal numbers would be after almost a full year of sharp declines, people using the waiving home inspection tactic to kind of leverage their offer in highly contentious situations, or just feeling so desperate they need a house where they're willing to buy it blind. So it's nice to see the trend kind of returning back to a more stable, more predictable, more of a traditional market from both your end and the inspection end, I think.
Well, it's really, during the pandemic and the craziness of this market, it was, you know, it's really hard to tell a first-time home buyer, these are the things on how to win, right? You waive your home inspection or, you know, have no contingencies, basically, no home sale contingency, no inspection contingency, no appraisal contingency, which some mortgage companies can do. Um, and for a first-time home buyer, that's pretty daunting. So I'm very happy to hear that your business is picking up and the market is stabilizing. And um, I think it's all in all a better scenario for all buyers and homeowners, just to kind of find out what their home is, what's going on in the home. If nothing comes up, that's a blessing, right? And if things do come up, they know how to address them.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're trending in the right direction for
Yes.
how the market is.
So a couple of questions for you. So for home buyers that are looking to buy an older home, so you know, mid 1800s to 1950s, let's say, what are the two major things that buyers should be looking for?
I like how you dated your definition of older homes because around here, I mean, I did a home yesterday built in 1850, and that's an old home.
It's an old home, right?
When we're looking at homes that old, I say the number one thing that should be a concern that people should want to identify and prioritize is really the quality and thoroughness of how the house has been updated in the last, say, 150, 175 years. In several thousands of inspections I've done on very old antique homes, the big differentiating factor I have found is really the attention to detail people put into what they renovate over the years, what they ignore, the quality of workmanship they put into things. And I'll give you a couple examples. One of the big things in old homes, especially 1800s, early 1900s, that can cause insurance issues, be very expensive, be kind of a pain in the butt to fix is knob and tube wiring.
Oh yeah.
So when somebody updates electrical in an old home, the best practice is to have it done as thorough as possible, get every last bit of old wiring out of that house you can and fully update it. It creates a much different type of house when you have a house that somebody decided to only partially update it. And they left some knob and tube in some spots and some old stuff, and you wind up with what you've heard me say at inspections before. Hey, you have a museum of wiring here where you've had a little bit of stuff done in the 1940s, you had a little bit of stuff done in the 1990s, and nothing's been done since then. That creates a real problematic situation for people, especially if you're a first-time home buyer or you don't have the means or the practical um, tools in your belt to address these things quickly or before closing. Knob and tube wiring can cause insurance issues. It can be a fire risk. So that type of example applies to everything in an old home. When people have made structural improvements, when they've made plumbing improvements, when they've made heating improvements, really for a house that age, the most important thing is to understand, hey, do I have a fully updated home or do I have a partially updated home that's somewhere in between on a sliding scale that can really change how you live in the home and kind of how the home operates whether someone's done full renovations or partial renovations. So that's usually the biggest number one thing I keep in the back of my mind when going through an inspection for a really old home.
I think you and I both have experienced that. I think you've actually pointed that out to several of my buyers.
Sure, that sounds about right.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Uh,
Secondly, I would say just the quality of the initial construction to begin with. So a lot has changed from the 1800s to today. Um, the type of home you have when you're looking at an 1800s or an early 1900s home is really, really dependent on how they built it to begin with. The standards of workmanship, the standards of framing back 150, 160 years ago, standards were very lax. So there's a big difference between, let's say, a colonial house built in 1960 versus a cottage construction home built on a lake somewhere, down in a retirement or a vacation sort of area. Those are two very different homes built in the same era, but how you approach things, like I said, my number one concern was how you approach renovations and structural repairs and structural improvements
sure.
and bringing things up to modern standards is going to really vary greatly depending on the quality and the approach for initial construction. So you really want to understand not only what was done in your old home, but what type of old home you have, and sort of where your priorities should lie based on how it was built originally. And I really think those are the two most important things to keep in mind with really old homes.
Thank you. Um, so what are your what are two concerns that homeowners should be looking for when they buy a home? I'm going to say younger, right? So 1960s to today, let's say. What are two things that they should be concerned about or looking for?
My one and two for old homes and new homes actually flip. So I would say the number one concern with newer homes is what the number two concern was for old homes. It's the materials used, how the house was built. So back in 1860 to 1900, there was much less materials available to use for things like plumbing and electric and structural. Today, with newer homes, builders have a much greater tendency to differentiate themselves with the quality of construction they're building, because today you can choose a lower quality construction material to cut corners and be a little more frugal with your spending, or you can go the opposite end and say, hey, look, let's use really high-end materials, high-end framing practices, exceed code far and beyond. So the number one most important thing is understanding what quality home you have, because the quality of homes varies much more greatly with newer homes from the 60s and 70s to today than it did 150 years ago. 150 years ago, sure, like I mentioned, you have different qualities of home, but generally speaking, almost all the materials they used back then were by far superior to a lot of the materials we use today, where we've gone to plastic and plywood, and things don't last as long as they did back then. So number one is understanding, okay, what's the quality of workmanship I have? What should I expect from this house? Which brings me to number two. An older house, and you've heard me say this before as well, older homes have stood the test of time.
True.
If there's no major structural issues, and you might have an old field stone foundation, this place has been here for 150 years. It's pretty much seen everything it's going to see. You can kind of lay back and not focus so much on the preventative maintenance stuff and looking for normal wear and tear. Those things have happened and they've come and gone for the most part. With a newer home, you really have to be aware and say, okay, this house was built in 1995. It's only 25, 30 years old. What are the list of things I need to do to make sure, if I want to get another 100 years out of this house, what do I do to prevent it from wearing at an accelerated rate? What do I need to do to prevent water from getting in the basement? Environmental factors, especially in New England, where we have all four seasons: winter, spring, summer, fall. We should be coming to colder months these few weeks, but I know we're in the 70s today.
It doesn't feel like that today.
As the snow and ice comes, there are things you really need to be aware of with these newer homes, because like I said, the materials in newer homes, vinyl siding is only been around for the last 40, 50 years. It doesn't react the same way a solid piece of wood from the 1900s would react when snow and ice come. So I'd say protecting your home and understanding how to slow down the wear, how to minimize the environmental factors, snow, ice, water, hot, cold, freeze, thaw, all those types of things are usually what I say should be your second priority and on your top three list for newer homes. If you want to get a long life out of your home and be talking about your 1970s home in 2070.
Thank you. You mentioned that we should be in our colder weather right now, cooler weather, let's say. So as we head into the winter months, what are a couple of things that homeowners can and should do to ready their home for the winter months?
Winter months in New England, top three things, I say it all the time: gutters, downspouts, landscaping, and weatherproofing.
Okay,
Um,
then.
we're going to
So what do you
have a lot
mean?
of so I usually say start at the top of the house. Once the snow comes and we got 2 feet of snow melting off the house, when it goes from 20 degrees one day to 50 degrees the next day, that's when people experience a lot of water issues, drainage issues. If your gutters are full and they're not pitched the right way, or they're located in the wrong spots, that stuff tends to compound rapidly week after week in the winter months, especially in New England. So start with water control. Once you get down to the ground, I recommend people have a full landscaping job done before the first snow comes. Clean up old debris, old wood, downed trees, downed branches, anywhere where vermin have been nesting. You want, the first 10, 20 feet around your house to be as clear and free of debris and free of overgrown landscaping and areas where water is going to collect. Then from there, once you know the house can control the water and handle the snow and handle the cold, you want to make sure every entry point around the outside of your house, anywhere where you have a door with weather stripping on the bottom of the ground that's going to see ice and snow, make sure it's in good shape, make sure it's intact. Caulk around all your windows if caulking is missing around windows. Basement bulkhead doors in New England, make sure those things are sealed up before they're covered in 3-4 feet of snow and ice,
Yeah.
and you go open your basement door and you've got ice and water dripping in. It's really, weatherproof, water control, and clear as much landscaping and debris around the house as you can. And most people, if you take care of those things, October, November, December to February should be kind of stress-free, and you shouldn't wake up one day saying, holy moly, what do we have going on here?
Well, thank you so much. That is, I guess I never thought about weatherproofing the house or weatherizing the house, winterizing, let's say, um, from the roof down. So thank you for that. So of course, buyers can find you by commenting below, and I'd be more than happy to share your information. But can you let buyers know how they can find you?
Sure. We're on all social media. You can book through our Facebook. You can book through our website. You can follow us on Instagram. Our office number is 508-293-1770. You can find a real comprehensive review of our business. We've been in business since 2012. We're ASHI members, American Society of Home Inspectors. So if you go to homeinspector.org, you can find me by searching the Foxborough zip code 02035. So any way you can think about possibly reaching us, there's a way to get us. Happy to deal with anybody from new construction, old construction, first-time buyers, maintenance inspections. We do pre-listing walkthroughs. We cover just about every base that a home inspection company should be covering out here, kind of a one-stop shop for everybody.
Well, I know several of my clients have really enjoyed working with you. So I thank you so much for meeting with me today and just going over some tidbits about home inspections. I greatly appreciate it, and I will be talking to you soon.
Thanks for having me. Happy to do it anytime.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.